St. Michael's School stood on a cliff, shrouded in eternal fog that spread across the base of the mountain. Its walls, cracked by the passage of time, and dark corridors that seemed endless, bore witness to many secrets that no one wanted to recall. The nearby town was small and secluded. Only the old people, who still remembered the school's former glory, dared to speak of it. They said that here not only children, but also those with special abilities, were taught, those destined for greatness or downfall. Children chosen for a great purpose. And these children, who came to the school, were not always ordinary people. Clare, a young and determined girl, arrived at St. Michael's School, skeptical of ancient tales. She thought she was in for the usual life of a high school student, with lessons and friends, but that was not to be. From the very first day, as she stood at the doors of the school, she felt that something more than just education awaited her. She saw fear reflected on the faces of the other students, and some even avoided her gaze as she walked through the halls. One day during a break, she came across a book in the library that seemed ordinary, but when she opened it, Clare saw ancient symbols that should not have been on the pages of a regular school book. The words on the pages mixed together, creating strange images, as if the letters themselves were coming to life. "Don't read this, child," whispered the librarian, an old woman who had never spoken like that to the students before. Her eyes were filled with fear, and she took the book, as though saving Clare from an impending danger. That night, when darkness enveloped the school, Clare saw something unusual. She embarked on a journey through the underground corridors, silently slipping through the darkness. Suddenly, amidst the damp stone floor, she stumbled upon an old door leading to a forbidden room. And it was the room where two forces met, light and darkness. She saw senior students, who looked like members of a secret brotherhood. They were performing a ritual, summoning a power that could change everything. They did not know that Clare was watching them, but she understood that from that moment on, her life would be different. They began speaking about the chosen ones, about how the school was built not only for teaching, but also for choosing those who would become part of the angelic force or succumb to the demons. And Clare was among the chosen ones. Over the following weeks, Clare felt an invisible power developing within her. She could no longer calmly look at the other students. Sometimes, she felt as though two entities were fighting within her heart, one light, the other dark. And with each passing day, the choice became harder. What if her destiny was to become part of the dark force? Or perhaps she was chosen to become an angel, bringing light to this dark and ominous world? Nothing was as it had seemed at first. The school had transformed into an arena where the forces of light and darkness fought for each student. Secrets were revealed one by one, and Clare realized that her place in this battle had already been determined, though she could not understand which side she would take. Time left her no choice, for the school was already choosing its students, and it seemed ready to reveal its true nature, dark and relentless. One evening, as rain drenched the earth and thunder split the sky, Clare headed to the old library, where the book she had once discovered still awaited her. She felt that the only way to uncover the truth about herself and her role was to return to the place where it all began. Her heart burned with anxiety, but also with the desire to understand what was happening around her. The library was dark, the scent of old books and dust filled the air. Only one lamp in the corner faintly illuminated her path, and as Clare approached the shelves, her gaze once again stopped on the same book, which now was empty, but the key to her fate. She took it from the shelf and opened the first pages. "The time has come," whispered a voice. Clare turned, but the room was empty. Only the quiet rustling of pages and the feeling that something was watching her. The sensation grew stronger when she turned to the next page. These were no longer mere words, but incantations demanding her attention. Something within her soul responded, as if two worlds within her heart began to synchronize, like two forces striving for the same goal. She began to speak the words aloud, though her voice seemed foreign. Each sound echoed in the darkness, and suddenly, a figure appeared in the air. It was an angel, or rather, not just an angel, but its dark reflection, a demon that had emerged from the very heart of this school. He stood before her, tall and majestic, his eyes shining with an unknown light, containing all the dark power the school had harbored for centuries. You are destined for a great choice, Clare, he spoke quietly, as if her thoughts had become his words. Your soul is divided, as is this school. Angels cannot fully possess you, just as demons cannot. You stand on the threshold of two worlds. You belong to neither, but you can become what we seek, a being capable of balancing between them. Clare stood in silence. Her mind searched for an answer, but her heart beat faster. This was the moment when her inner struggle could surface. But what am I supposed to do? She asked. The choice is always yours, replied the demon, his face reflecting a bitter smile. You can remain a part of this school, and it will fully claim you. You will become one of us, serving only the darkness. But if you choose differently, you can rise as an angel and help me destroy everything we have built. You can destroy all of it, even if it means losing your essence. She felt the weight of the choice. Her heart raced, for she understood that the decision would have consequences not only for her life, but for the entire school. With each passing moment, she became more aware of her role. This was not just a choice between angel and demon, it was a struggle for her very soul. I want to know the truth, she said firmly. I want to know who I really am. You are the fusion of two forces, replied the demon, his voice growing louder, like thunder tearing through the sky. But remember, Clare, sometimes the darkest beings carry light in their hearts, and the brightest can become shadows. With words that tore her soul apart, Clare made her choice. She was ready to understand that her power came from the union of light and darkness. It was not simply a battle between good and evil, it was a battle for her very essence. And then, in that very moment, when she made her choice, the entire school erupted in bright light. A whirlwind of energy tore through the darkness, and before Clare appeared the other students, each holding their own secrets. And each of them was connected to these forces. She realized that her place among them was no accident. St. Michael's School was no longer what it had seemed at first. Now it was a place for those who could change the world, holding both sides, light and shadow, within them. And Clare, looking at her reflection once more, realized that her struggle had only just begun. After Clare made her choice, everything around her changed. The dark and light energies intertwined in her soul began to spill out into reality, and the school became a place where her power was felt in every corner. The walls, once seemingly impenetrable and dead solid, now trembled from invisible energies. The echo of her determination reached the very heart of the school, and she felt her role here not only being fulfilled but continuing to develop. Her powers grew stronger with each passing day. She felt how the angelic part of her soul tried to lead her toward nobility, while the demonic force seduced her with power and ruthlessness. She learned to control her new abilities, and every time she walked through the school corridors, her presence made the old walls tremble and strange echoes run through the shadows. But that was not enough. She realized that there was a greater threat than simply maintaining the balance between angels and demons. It was not just about power or control. The school was part of something much bigger, dark and merciless, gathering forces beyond human comprehension. One day, in the midst of classes, Clare noticed unusual movement in the schoolyard. Something didn't seem right. Shadows began to move as if they were alive. They were coming closer to her, and she knew these were not just shadows. These were enemies, ancient forces awakening. It turned out that the school had been sealed not to protect the students, but to imprison these monsters, creatures that longed to conquer this world. It was revealed that at the very heart of the school, there was a powerful portal that could merge light and darkness into one relentless being. Clare was the key to this portal. Her chosen role was not merely to balance the forces, but to serve as a guard against the very creatures that sought to break free from this world and fill everything with darkness. Demons on the other side of the portal could already sense that it was about to open. Clare understood that she must protect the school and everything it had built over the centuries. But to do so, she would have to make a sacrifice, one that would mean losing part of her self-determination, losing part of her power. In the dark temple of the school, in the room where the two elements collided, Clare met the old guardian of this boundary, an angel who served not for good, but to maintain balance. He was one of the first to protect this portal, but also one of the first to understand its danger. You must choose, Clare, he said as she approached the archway leading to the portal. "This will be your sacrifice. You will either close the portal and remain part of this world, or you will release one of the forces and allow it to rule. If you close the portal, angels and demons will stay where they are, and this world will be safe, but your powers will lose their balance. If you allow the demons to break free, you may become invincible. But then, darkness will consume everything around." Claire stood before the difficult choice. Her heart struggled with duty and desire, fear and temptation. She knew that the only way to preserve everything was to sacrifice the part of herself that was closer to the darkness. She reached her hands toward the portal, feeling the dark energy enveloping her, trying to pull her in. And in that moment, she made her choice. Following her decision, Claire gathered all her strength and began chanting the incantation to close the portal. The demons on the other side were breaking through, but she gathered all her will and directed her energy to close it. The portal closed, and the last echo of darkness faded into the air. But her power was changed. The angelic part of her soul became dominant, and she felt the darkness retreat, though part of it still remained. She knew that this balance would not last. The school remained intact, but before Claire lay a new path, a path where her struggle to maintain balance would continue. And this path had no end, for light and darkness would always walk side by side, no matter what each of them chose. After Claire closed the portal, the school lost its usual essence. And although the darkness disappeared and the demons no longer posed a threat, something in the air remained heavy and uncertain. Claire felt how her new powers intertwined with the ones that remained, and each day brought new challenges. She understood that the fight was not over, but had merely changed its forms. Even now, when the school was no longer directly under threat, the very nature of the place remained mysterious and awe-inspiring. Over time, new students began to suspect that something more had happened than just protection from supernatural forces. Claire felt that her place in the school had changed. She was no longer just a student. She had become part of this mechanism that maintained the balance between light and darkness. And every choice you make leaves a mark on the heart of this place. Claire looked at the librarian, and in her gaze was not only sadness but also certainty. She understood that even after it seems like a choice has been made, everything was only just beginning. Others kept their distance, afraid that her power might influence them. She began to understand that her role was not only to maintain the balance, but also to guide a whole generation of new students who, like her, might face a choice between light and darkness. But in time, it turned out that Claire was not the only one who had made this choice. More and more students began to feel that they, too, had a part of light and a part of darkness within themselves. She began noticing strange signs. Students who seemed to have no special abilities started demonstrating extraordinary powers. Sometimes they awakened energy that even they could not control, and sometimes their eyes would fill with a strange, unfamiliar light or darkness. Claire began to feel that the school was approaching a new moment of choice. If once she had been just one of the students, now she was part of something greater. And the scariest part was that this process could not be stopped. The students passing through the school all had their powers, but how they would use them remained uncertain. One evening, when Claire was standing on the stairs of the old temple located at the center of the school, one of the students, Andreas, approached her. He was a newcomer, but already had a reputation among those seeking the truth in darkness. He looked at her, and in his gaze, there was both a thirst for knowledge and anxiety, as if he already sensed what this might lead to. "I know why you chose this," he said quietly, "but I'm not sure it's the right choice. The struggle you're fighting is just beginning. And it's not only about the power you've gained. It's about how we will use it." Claire looked at him, her gaze sharp but calm. "I've already made my choice. And now I have to teach others how to maintain this balance," she replied. Andreas didn't seem convinced. He took a step back, as if weighing his words. "I don't want to become your enemy, Claire. But I see how the school is changing. It has become a place for those who have power but no purpose. You may have closed the portal, but we can't close ourselves off. This fight will be endless." His words made Claire think. She realized that Andreas was right. The struggle between light and darkness never stops. And even though she herself was ready to lead this path, what would become of the others? What kind of students would she teach? Could she give them answers to the questions that arose after she closed the portal? In that moment, she felt someone's presence approaching. It was the librarian, the same older woman who had once warned Claire about the book that changed her life. Claire, you don't know everything yet. The school is not just a place for learning. It is a place for trials. And every choice you make leaves a mark on the heart of this place. Claire looked at the librarian, and in her gaze was not only sadness but also certainty. She understood that even after it seems like a choice has been made, everything was only just beginning. And every student of this school would become part of this endless struggle. I'm ready, she said as the librarian left, leaving her alone with her thoughts. I'm ready to go further and teach them how to maintain balance, even if it means we will fight until the end. Meanwhile, the school, which had once been a place for choice, had become an arena where every day would bring a new stage in the fight. And for Claire, this would not be the end, but only the beginning of a new chapter in this story. Claire stood on the threshold of a new stage in her journey, realizing that she was no longer just a participant in this struggle. She had become its teacher, leader, the one who would determine which path others would choose. But at the same time, she felt that the secret she had uncovered could not be easily unraveled. Every day brought new questions, and each step brought her closer to an answer that, to her, seemed like it would always remain only partially understood. At night, when the school fell silent and the shadows grew deeper, Claire often found herself alone in her room, going through old records left by those who had been there before her. They spoke of the rises and falls of students, of how this world revolved around a great, invisible force. And each time she read these stories, she felt that she might no longer be like everyone else. She had been chosen not by chance. In every action and every decision she made, there was now a deeper meaning. However, despite her new role, the dark part of her soul sometimes tried to break free. It was a feeling that could not be ignored. The open door to the world of darkness offered a power that was difficult to resist. But she knew that by allowing herself to fully sink into this darkness, she would destroy the balance she had been trying to maintain. She couldn't allow everything she had achieved to be undone by one reckless step. But with each new student who came to the school, Claire felt more and more that her mission was not just about protecting the school. Her role was to ensure that everyone had a chance to make their own choice, without yielding to the influence of either force. And while many students saw her as an ideal, and some as a threat, Claire understood that her true task was not to help them choose a side, but to give them the opportunity to find their own path. However, she was not prepared for what was about to happen next. One day, during a regular class hour, the school began to tremble. It felt as though the very ground beneath her feet was cracking. Red lights flickered in the corridors, and with each step, the tension grew. Claire knew this was no mere coincidence. It was something far more terrifying. She rushed to the library, hoping to find answers there. In the library, she was met by the same old woman, the librarian, who had once warned her. Her face was dark, as if it reflected the very shadow itself. She extended an old book to Claire, its pages containing mentions of the dark power that had been long kept hidden within the school. "Do you feel it?" the librarian asked, her voice barely audible in the darkness. "You didn't just close the portal. You triggered something else. The power you contained is now trying to find a new path. It cannot be restricted, and it will return." Claire felt a chill as she realized the librarian's words were true. The dark force she had closed away had never fully disappeared. It had been waiting for a moment to be freed, and that moment had come. The problem wasn't just that she had to fight evil. The problem was that these forces were already inside her. They had become part of her. "What should I do?" Claire asked, trying not to let fear take over. "You must choose again," the librarian replied. "But now this choice will have consequences not only for you. It will affect everyone here. You must either destroy this power completely, or accept it, which means you will lose control. The choice is yours, Claire." Claire began to feel her heart race, her mind filled with thoughts of how everything could change. She was no longer the person she once was. Since the moment she made her choice, the world would never be the same. But now it all depended on whether she could control what had awakened. Clare understood that her struggle had only just begun. Now, she would have to fight not only for the school but for her soul. Her choice would matter not just for herself, but for everyone who came after her. And although she didn't know how it would end, she knew one thing: she could not let the darkness win.